good. So let me introduce my topic, and then we can have an open conversation about it. We'll run a mic around if you have questions, and it's not a big enough audience that we shouldn't feel free to just ask questions, even though this feels to me like a lecture hall. We'll get there. So a little bit about me. So my name is Chris Yeh, and I would say I've worked in technology for a long time. I was employee 9999 at Oracle a long time ago. And I worked on Oracle's first PL SQL compiler as an engineer. So I used to be a C++ coder way back in the day. I met my wife at Oracle also. Been a management consultant, so I used to be a partner at Mercer Management Consulting, so I have a little bit more of this kind of big company consulting experience, which is sometimes really helpful as a product manager because it gives you a little extra polish when you're trying to put together data or presentations, sometimes nice for that to be there. I've been head of product at two public software companies. One was Blue Martini. Most of you are way too young to remember Blue Martini, but it was one of the last two big IPOs of 2000 before the whole economy collapsed. Sorry about that. I've got some feedback. And so that was my first experience as a product lead. I was way too young in my career to run a product team at a public company. And you could know that because if you look back to see the way the company failed around its product as the market declined, you could see the fails on the product side. So it's interesting to see what happens to companies when the economy really goes poorly, because I think the best product people tend to know what to do when the economy starts to slide, right? They know where to pull back, and I didn't back in 2000. I've been head of marketing and product at a small software company that was acquired by Oracle. I was part of Jerry Yang's team as he came back into Yahoo. The history of Yahoo is very interesting, but at one point, Yahoo had a CEO named Terry Semel, who was a media guy, and he was running the company for a while, and Jerry Yang decided to come back in and be the CEO. And he brought in a team with him, and I was part of the team. We worked on turning Yahoo into a platform, working with developers and having developers build on top of Yahoo platform, and I also ran the Yahoo developer program then. And you guys know this was a total disaster, right? So 4 years of, we turned down a $44 billion offer from Microsoft while I was there, and then the business just declined a lot over the 4 years that I was there. But I also ran Yahoo Groups at the time, Delicious, which is an old tagging website as well, so I have some consumer experience. And in the past 6 years or 7 years, I worked as the head of product for Box. So I joined Box when we were probably about $20 million, not quite 200 people. I left in December of last year. The company is now going to do about $600 million in sales this year. We went public in 2015, so I saw Box through a pretty cool transition where we grew and actually went public. And the reason I talk about Blue Martini and others is because I think in a career, lots of things go well and lots of things don't go well. And it's all about the path that you follow and how you handle the ups and downs, right? Handle the ups with grace and handle the downs as well as you can. And so that's what happens in a long career. So I've been hanging out all year, just taking photos. I also play music and do a bunch of other things. And I just joined a company about a week ago as the CEO in San Francisco. It's a travel software company. So corporate travel SaaS, think of it that way. And if you look at the space at all, the news in my space today, I have a tiny little company, 20-some people. My competitor just raised $154 million in their C round today at $1 billion valuation. And I think they're doing $15 million in revenue. So it's just a very different world. And I've been here this week talking to many startups and understanding the ratios, so the ratio of ARR to employees to investment. So I have a pretty good sense of how a lot of companies here are configured, which it's been fun for me to do that this week. And I've been talking about product management the whole week. Just how do you build a product team? What are some things to look out for? And just kind of engaging that conversation. So let me start with a couple stories. So how many people know what Box is? Okay, so maybe just the quick summary on Box is we put files in the cloud for companies. So if you work for a company that uses Box, you would put all of your files in Box's cloud. It would be secure. It would run globally. It would have a lot of the features that you would expect in a consumer product, but for an enterprise. But most of you know this logo. What's this logo? Dropbox, right? The more famous version, right, of Box in a lot of ways. A consumer product, right, that was built around a product called Sync. The idea was that I would synchronize content from my machine to the cloud, and that would allow me to both have a cloud version of it, but also have it locally on my machine if I had to, I didn't have an internet connection. So back in 2011, so this is my first product management story. I'll tell you two stories. This one was, in 2011, we saw that Dropbox had a pretty good sync product, and everywhere we went, somebody said to us, why don't you have a product like Dropbox? Why don't you have a sync product like Dropbox? We did not have one, and we didn't have a lot of resources at the time. So what happened was, we looked at what we did from a product point of view. There's a content store, right? There's a place we store files. There's an interface to that content store, right? Some sort of internal API or whatever it is we were calling at the time. And we needed to build a desktop sync app to run against that content store. And so the question was, how hard can that be? This is just a desktop app, right? I mean, if you looked at the Dropbox app, you'd be like, that looks pretty simple. So we made a decision. We gave the project to some contractors, and then we managed it with a program manager. So a program manager, in my definition, somebody who runs a project on schedule, makes sure the project is going well. And we thought we just gave the contract to some Ukraine engineers, and we said, just build us this, a desktop shim that looks a little like Dropbox. So that didn't go well, right? And this is what happens this happens in lots of small companies. We don't have a lot of time and resources. We need to build this thing that looks like customers are asking for, but the core engineering team cannot build it. So what we did was we built it ourselves with a contractor, and you can see what happened. Two things. First of all, the interface to our content store was terrible. That means that when the team built the initial box store for content and files, we did not do a good job thinking about how we were supposed to scale interfaces that read into it. So that's a problem. And the second thing is, because we had a program manager leading this, we didn't understand the use cases. So let me give you a simple use case. When you use Dropbox today, most of you use it to sync your individual files into the cloud, right? So that looks like a product that you could do pretty easily, maybe. But what if your business model was that thousands of people could share a folder? And let's say one person synchronized a 50 megabyte PowerPoint into a folder shared by 1,000 people. What happens? We have 1,000 people who now are synchronizing that file on a network, right? So all of a sudden we have a scale problem we didn't anticipate. We didn't even think about stuff like this, right? So we built a sync product. And I wanted to show you the closest approximation I can to the damage this caused us. So this is the number, so this is 100% bar of churned dollars from Box in 2012 and 2013. You can see that 1/4 of the churned dollars came from our sync product. That means the customer would leave us, and then they would tell us the reason why they were leaving us. It was our sync product. It's very rare that you can see such a decision played out in such financial terms, right? As a product manager, I think your impact on things sometimes is a little hard to read, but this one was really, really clear, right? We had a product that was causing us to lose, basically lose 1/4 of the dollars that were leaving Box every single year. This is millions of dollars at this point, right? So that was a huge problem, and it took us 2 years. This is the only product in my whole career, I've been doing software a long time, that we rebuilt from the ground up. That means we scrapped the entire product and rebuilt it from the ground up. We assigned probably 20 engineers to that. That was maybe 1/4 of our engineers at the time. And we just put millions of dollars of rework into it. And then if you ever want to search on Box sync problems and just look at the customer impact of our bad decision, you'll see that it hurt the company for years in terms of reputation and approach. So I wanted to start with this example because it's it's a negative example, but it's a good reason, a good way to frame product management in a way, right? So very pressure-driven situation, CEO makes the call. Contractors, no product managers were involved in this, and I was just starting as the head of product, so I didn't, a lot of decisions were moving when I got in, but no product managers were assigned to it, and the user experience was outsourced. That's the other thing I've learned never to do. Yes? Oh, is this bad? Okay. Is this better? Okay. Oh, geez. Was I saying a whole bunch of stuff that nobody could hear? Shit. All right. Sorry. Okay, so anyway, these were the lessons we learned from this, right? So this is a downside product management story, and I'll come back into product management to talk about it more generally. Let's talk about an upside story. So story number 2, this is about 2011-12 when the iPad came out. So the iPad came out, we were one of the first apps to be on the iPad.
And I had a product manager at the time who said, you know what, it'd be super cool if we could take Box and bundle it with a few other applications. Let's call it the iPad bundle. So it'd be Box and maybe a note-taking application or something like that. So we created the iPad bundle as a concept. This is the actual slide from marketing that we came with. So marketing came back after we proposed the iPad bundle and did this. I don't know if you've ever had a marketing team do this to you, but this stuff drives me nuts, right? So at the time, there were so many requests going into marketing that they forced us to fill out a form to talk about a new product. Like, what do we do with this new product? And this was the form. It had, why are we doing this? What are the vehicles? The single message we would like to communicate. And then the project, I love project tone, bold. So I only mean to make fun of marketers a little bit. But the idea being that we were going to do this, take this iPad bundle and market it in this form. But if you really looked at what was happening in 2011, this is kind of a hard chart to read, but let me see if I can do it. This is the number of units shipped per year of computing devices, starting from 1975 all the way through 2011. Right, so look what happened, right? So in the devices that were shipped in the 70s, it took them forever to get to scale in terms of number of units. But look what happened in 2009, 10, 11. What was happening was computing devices were coming out and being deployed en masse at a rate never before seen. It was a massive trend, right? Here was the other thing that was happening. So the blue here is the market share of the PC over the years from 1975 to 2011. So we had two things happening. Lots of computing devices coming on and a complete collapse of the IBM PC ecosystem, right? Like all those PCs were getting pushed down from a relative computing units point of view to really middle of the pack, and now it's even lower. So the reason why I bring this up is because we came up with the iPad bundle, and we said that would be cool. And then our marketers gave us a sheet to fill out to launch it. And then this was happening in the background. We were building a product that was one of the first products to run on an iPad. So I don't know if you guys have ever met Aaron Levy. So Aaron is the CEO of Box and was my boss for a number of years, or for all the time I was there. And Aaron has this look he gives you when he thinks that you have done, something wrong. Or, this is the look he gives you when he thinks you're full of shit, basically. And the reason why he gave us this look is because he thought that we were thinking way too small about this. We had like 5 apps. We were calling it the iPad bundle. And so he really pushed hard on us all as a team to work on this idea. And what we did was we came up with a concept called Box One Cloud. So we gave it a name. So this iPad bundle is now called Box One Cloud. And then what we did was we set a team loose to get us application partners. So by October of that year, we had signed over 200 One Cloud partners, and we launched this thing. So our iPad bundle became Box plus 200 applications built around Box and the iPad. And it had a big brand name. The whole company got behind the launch. And we even we annoyed Apple by driving a truck in front of their WWDC. This is WWDC. It's the big Apple developer event in the city. And we put our OneCloud truck in front of it, and we got a call from Apple telling us to move the truck, which I left on the street for another 2 days before, because you can't tell me to pull a truck off the streets of San Francisco. So interesting, right? Created a big buzz and big launch out of the project, but we also got our first $1 million deal because of this. So at the time, companies like Eli Lilly, pharmaceutical company, were putting out lots of iPads to their sales forces for use in the field. So they deployed 20,000 iPads with Box running on it and one of our partner applications, a note-taking application that they liked. So it resulted in our first $1 million deal. So the whole point I wanted to make is that product management started the conversation, but the inspiration kind of ultimately came from elsewhere. And I always get asked, should product managers be in charge of innovation? And my answer to that is generally no. Right? Product managers might see interesting things in the course of day-to-day work, but putting anyone in charge of innovation is not going to work, first of all, in most cases. And second of all, innovation and kind of inspiration comes from anywhere, but product managers can start the conversation. So I give a lot of credit to the person who gave us the iPad bundle, because the iPad bundle became One Cloud, became 200 applications, became our first $1 million deal. Think about product position versus the industry's biggest trends. That's why all of you guys are like, I'm using ML. We have AI in our product today, right? So everyone's riding that trend, but what are the big trends that we're trying to ride, and then do they become part of our product and marketing message simultaneously? And then build product and features with some ecosystem leverage. Always cool to be able to leverage other people's strengths when you head to market. So this is the good product example for me. So I use that as a precursor to say that product management is the single most critical function in any software company. And I'm only slightly biased, right? But it's true from my point of view, which is that if you are not setting a great path as the barrier between your engineering team and the outside world, I don't see how the software company succeeds in any form, right? And so that's why I think product management is the most critical function in a software company. And the challenge is that product managers get little or no training. So first of all, most product managers learn on the job, right? Or they learned at another company from somebody else. You don't go to school to be a product manager. And so they learn the job on their own. So the most important function, think about that, the most important function in a software company is maybe one of the least most likely to have received formal education on how to do the job or how to build the organization or how to proceed forward. So I get so many questions when I talk to product managers everywhere. This isn't just, by the way, it's people that I've met here have said it's hard to find good product managers here. It's hard to find good product managers anywhere. So I don't think it's endemic to this market that we struggle to get product managers in good shape. I think it's true of virtually any market that you go to. So today I'm going to spend the time doing kind of 7 suggestions for how to run product management. So this is concrete, I think, so, and it's all my own opinion. So, and if you disagree, actually, I'd love you to disagree. We can talk about it. So I'm actually interested to engage the room too on some of these topics if you're interested in them. But I tried to kind of find some really pragmatic ways to talk about product management. Let's see how it goes with you guys. All right, the first one. When I look at a product manager, I'm always looking to product managers that have market-facing skills. That means I like market-facing skills, people who know how to talk to customers, who know how to look at the business environment and interpret it, do good competitive analysis, talk to partners. So I like product managers typically with forward-facing skills as opposed to technical skills necessarily, if I wanted to draw the contrast. And that's not true of everybody in the room here. We may prefer product managers that run Scrum or something else, but I prefer product managers who are always kind of market-leaning. And I'll talk about it and we can discuss it a bit. So product management, right, sits between engineering and the outside world, so that is the role. So if they have to do something, should they face towards engineering or should they face towards the outside world with most of their skills and effort? So the problem with product managers is that we ask them to do all these things, right? It's like, I want you to do sales and marketing support. I mean, please go talk to this angry customer. You're my agile story owner, right? You have to write the stories for me. Are you running Scrum? Because we don't have anybody to run Scrum. Just think of the stuff that we ask product managers to do, and then add on top of that product managers don't actually know, in many cases, what they should do, right? So now you've got like way too many tasks assigned to somebody who doesn't know which tasks they should do. My perspective on this is that if you clustered all of those things into various lists, some that are market-facing and then some that are kind of company-facing, I really prefer the skills that are outlined in orange here to be the baseline skills for product managers, and that they spend a lot of their time kind of thinking about what's happening in the market, evangelizing the product, talking to customers, and figuring out what's going on. Obviously, things like product roadmap. I also like people who are good communicators, people who are good writers, or can stand up in front of an audience and present. I just kind of like that skill because that helps drive inspiration. So this is my perspective on this. Any thoughts on this? Any disagreement with this or questions? No disagreements. That's bizarre. Because I asked the question in a few audiences this week, and how could we have no disagreements? There's not somebody here that thinks product managers need to spend most of their time with engineers? No? Okay. A lot of product managers spend most of their time with engineers. I think in my experience. They're just involved in trying to keep everything moving during the day. So, okay. So anyway, that's my first perspective, market-facing skills. The question I always get on this one is, does that mean product managers don't know the product? Don't you think product managers have to know the product, so they have to spend time knowing the product? So how could they be doing all this? Second thing, your PMs should know and be able to draw the entire product. So my favorite question to ask a product manager candidate, and one that is totally unfair is, can you draw on the whiteboard your product? That's the question. And the reason why it's an unfair question is because it has no structure, it doesn't give any direction, it doesn't tell people what to do. But wait till you ask that question of a product manager candidate. See what they do on that whiteboard. And it's interesting to see the different interpretations. There's no right answer to the question, by the way. They can go up, and sometimes I see product managers draw a user interface, and they use that user interface as the way to illustrate what the product does and where the value is. Sometimes people draw architecture diagrams. Sometimes, really technical product managers draw like network architecture diagrams. I saw that once. But it's not only what they draw, it's what they say about the product when they draw it, which is, here I'd like to explain to you what the product does, or here I'd like to explain the value of our product. And that's also a big difference, right? So somebody who goes up and says, well, here's what the product does, that's an interesting, it's okay, but at least they can explain what it does. Here's what the product drives for benefits, right? So we built the product to solve this pain point, and so because we were focused on solving that pain point, here's the product we built. Somebody asked me, well, what does that look like for you? This is the product diagram I drew after about a month at Box. So I basically, I wanted to sit down with the CTO and others to really understand what Box did and how it did it. And I tend to like to know what's running inside the architecture. I just want to know what the pieces are. So I'm asking, so this is a pseudo-technical, pseudo-marketing-y diagram. This is not a real diagram of any form, but this is how I would draw a product, because I care about what are the different components running in the system, who's building what, what's the stack look like. I even care like what colos and S3 we're running in. Splunk, Hadoop, like where do these pieces bind in? One of the reasons like it's good to know this as a product manager, if you can get into this and understand it, is because oftentimes the things we're asked to react to have to do with the architecture. So for example, we're really having trouble scaling the MySQL database system that we have right now. And we all, if you work long enough in this area, you know that MySQL databases can be sharded. And then the question becomes, well, how long is it going to take us to shard this thing? And have we really thought through that, right? Maybe a question around multi-tenancy, like where do all these customers live? And what if a customer asks me to be on a shard somewhere? Like there's all sorts of stuff that will come up. And I think, so the most amazing product managers have the forward-facing skills I just described, but can also get into this if they need to. And I think that non-technical product managers should be able to do this. Because I think your non-technical product manager should be curious enough to learn this if they really want to be great at their job. All right, let me stop there. Any questions on that or thoughts? Agreements, disagreements? This is just gonna, agreement, that's good. Any disagreement, or is this just gonna be a quiet audience today? All right, no disagreements, but we can keep talking about it. But this is my opinion again about what I think product managers should know how to do and how they do it. A clear, transparent product planning process. This is a big question that I oftentimes get. It's how do I build a roadmap? How do I make sure that people in the company don't understand what we're doing and why? And so I think the most important word here is actually the word transparent. It's hard to do a transparent planning process, and I still encourage product managers to do it. Right? So the fact is that no matter what company you're in, what you're running, you are getting information and input on the product from many different sources. Your sales team and your prospects, your customers, anybody who does technical stuff on the engineering side is probably telling you what they need to do in order to succeed going forward. Things in the market, competitors. If you're like me, you have a CEO and founder that is constantly pushing. So you always are managing a CEO and then other. And I think what happens to a lot of product teams is they do not create a process that's transparent for why they make decisions. And I think the more you do that, to say, here, we made this decision and we're going to do this instead of this, and to explain it clearly to the whole company is really, really important. So I have stood up in front of teams before and said, this feature that it seems like all our customers are asking for, we're just not going to do that right now. And let me just explain why we made that decision. And oftentimes, people are unhappy with the decision because their customer might have the pain. But if you explain the decision, at least they can say they heard you explain it, and then they can come up later and tell you why they still think you should do the feature, right? When I left Box in December, I'm sure there were some salespeople who were overjoyed And they were overjoyed because for years I resisted doing a few data loss protection features that they wanted. I just didn't feel that was a business that I wanted us to be in. And I just explained it that way. And they knew I didn't want to do it. And they would keep asking. And so I'm not there anymore. So let's see if that changes. But I think you want to stand by your principles and explain to people clearly why it is that you're doing something. The other thing that is tough for a lot of product teams is how to plan with any kind of future time horizon in mind, right? So I think if the product managers in the room here, how many of you guys have a roadmap that's farther out than 3 months? Okay. How about 6 months? A few. More than a year? There's one with more than a year. How far do you go? 18 months? You have a 2-year roadmap? Damn. All right. Yeah. No, okay, I heard that. So the comment here was it's going to change. So why do you still need to project a horizon if it's going to change? Countdown? Okay, maybe. Other reasons. Why do you have to, why should you project out more than 6 to 12 months even though it's going to change? Excuse me? To settle, so satisfy some stakeholders, he says. People like me. No. What's that? Yes, maybe sometime investors, okay? Yeah, please. Yes. So the comment, if you didn't hear it, is the comment is at least you should understand that you want to arrive over here. Now, how you get there might look a little bit zigzaggy because these are small companies in many cases, right? And we reposition or reset our roadmap every 3 months or 2 months. But yes, having a sense of where you're going, right? Is that roughly where you were going as well? Yep. To stimulate the critical thinking on the team and anticipate user needs. Yeah, those two are very, very good reasons to push a team to really go out further. Yeah, please. Yep, structure's a hiring plan, right? So you know where you have to put people over time. Yeah, please. Push for a higher dream, yes. So these are all really good reasons, right? So even though you might be so busy you can't even pull your head up out of your screen on a day-to-day basis, this process of creating what a future might look like for the company from a product point of view is really critical. And so I stole this a little bit from Mark Zuckerberg a few years ago at F8, but we added something to it. This is the framework we used at Box. We created 3 time horizons, and those time horizons are completely arbitrary. For us, it was 6 months, 12 months, and 24 months. That was what we used. But you could use anything. You go 3, 6, 12, whatever it is you want to use. But have some time horizons in mind for your future. And then in those time horizons, the y-axis, I like this kind of potential impact, which is what's the impact on the business of the projects that we're thinking about doing. The bubbles are projects, and then the colors are product lines. So 3 product lines here, each one with a set of project areas that we can work on, kind of going across a few time horizons going forward, and then each one of those has some sort of cost associated with it or some sort of assessment of effort. The way that we built this diagram was we did not ask product managers to do this initially. What we did was we put the CEO, me, I was the head of product at the time, our head of platform, and our head of engineering in a room. We put us in a room for 2 nights a week for 3 months. It took us a long time. I mean, I think one of the challenges is nobody talks to each other anymore. We're so busy. So we sat for a couple hours, and the way it was organized, we had somebody from our finance team there with us to understand the costs, and we had somebody who was really good at drawing PowerPoints and mock-ups. And that's the team, 6 people. And when this was done, then this was brought to the PM teams to be adjusted, because we knew there was a bunch of things that had to happen. But the reason why that's important is because it's done top-down. right? Not bottom up from a PM point of view. You could do it that way, but I think you want to align the CEO and the product team top down sometimes, just so that the vision is there, right? And then find a process for going bottoms up. That's our process. So like I said, this is my opinion, but I do feel like just this concept, you have to look out a few years, and even if it means that you're changing things very, very quickly, I think you still want to be able to do that if you can, and it certainly creates a lot of conversation around the company. And then the final thing is engineers are really always asking for this. And why? Because when they write code, they're thinking about scalability, or where does everything go, or hey, what is this module going to be sometime in the future? It's good to know what that module might be like a year from now, right? And so engineers always complain about product features roadmaps that are only out 3 months, because they don't know what else to do after 3 months, and they don't know how to build something now that might be changed in the future if it needs to be changed. Any other thoughts on this? Yeah, please. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I can. You know, I mean, and this is obviously focused on software, a lot of the discussion here, but you're right. I think so product is everything, right? It's the hardware, it's the product, it's the service. You can define product really, really broadly. And I think all I would say here is, yeah, if there are tremendous lead times for things, right? These horizons can be they actually have to be defined, right? If we don't do this in hardware, then I don't know what components I need to be buying and when before I do that. I think in software, we get away with this a little bit because we can kind of, especially in the world where we're just building stuff and throwing it in there on a S3 server or an EC2 server, we get away with it a little bit. But in hardware, I think you have to be even more disciplined about this, because I don't even understand how you build product like this if you don't have like a long horizon to understand what components need to be built. But I think also maybe just my question for hardware would be, I think there needs to be componentry that's a lot more flexible in hardware these days, so that software drives a lot of functionality, not hardware. And I think if you looked at cameras today as an example, you'd see a lot of cameras are delivering more and more features in firmware, right? So the idea being, hey, I do one generation of hardware, but really I'm making a lot of changes in firmware. Tesla cars, right? I can do an upgrade of my entire car based on just a software upgrade overnight, yeah. So that's why software is becoming super important even in traditional hardware businesses today. Yeah.
Hi, Eric from Easy Taxi Cabify here.
Yeah.
So prioritization process that takes into consideration all these inputs that you've shown can become from very simple to a plethora of ways how to do it.
Yes.
What in your experience is the best process
for prioritization?
To take into input all those inputs on the previous slides and get a clear prioritization.
Yeah.
On the left.
So the question, you guys heard the question, right? Around like what's pragmatically a good way to do prioritization. So the first part of it for me is I want to know how much everything costs. So I don't know if anyone's ever talked to you about this in an agile form, but I call it shopping with points, right? So like every project that we put up here has a number of engineering points associated with it. If you're running agile in some form, right, velocity, and so velocity adds some degree of cost to everything that you're doing. So if you're going to go shopping, it's important to know how much everything costs first, unless you're so rich that you can buy everything. And none of us are that rich in a software development environment. So what is the constraint, and how much does each thing cost relative to each other becomes the first thing. The second thing then, I have always found that the hardest part of prioritizing is engineering wants, especially as businesses get bigger, engineering wants a lot of run the business time. So for example, I will lose a good maybe, so the thing that makes it hard when your company's bigger, like at the end box, I'm going to say engineering wanted 70% of their resources for run the business every quarter. So that's really hard, right? Because you can't lose 70% of your engineering resources to run the business. But that's a good tension, which is what I'll talk about that a little bit, in a little bit. So so first of all, shopping with points, and then so this is, I don't know if you guys will all agree with this, but product management creates a list based on all of the things that they want to do in product lines. Engineering creates a list. Product management's list represents everything in the business. engineering's list represents the technical things that we want to do. And then it's a hard debate. There's no resolution to the debate because the product leader is equal to the engineering leader in my model. And so we're just back and forth working on this. If we run into an impasse, we either work through it or we compromise. And which is why I'd like, an engineer, sometimes I'll say, listen, I really, is this working okay? It's so echoey. But I want the engineering leader to justify. It's totally fair for the engineering leader to ask me to justify why I need this project here.
And you read the discussion together with the decision maker, the CEO, or are you both like
no,
try
no,
to
no, no,
agree
no.
and then escalate
So
in case of conflict?
I think if a decision goes to the CEO, you have failed to figure out what to do for the company, because. I'm sure this is controversial too. I don't think you want the CEO to be the tiebreaker in a discussion. I think you want to have the best decision for the company. Chances are these teams know what's best from a product point of view. You can go to the CEO to break a tie, but oftentimes CEOs have biases that are highly product driven, not engineering driven, right? So if CEO is if I say, hey, Aaron, it's gonna be this feature or this engineering project, it's just not a good result for anybody. Engineering team feels like we failed. Does that help? Okay. And that brings me to this one, which is drive towards independent product leadership. And what that means is a lot of companies here, I met one today, I had lunch with a company here, and product management reports to the CTO. Our product management reports to the engineering team. And I just think this is a big no-no. In most companies. You might not have the right people, and you have to adjust to the right people, but to have either the engineering team reporting to product or product reporting to engineering, I think breaks the tension that you actually have to have in order to build good product most of the time. And so if you're an early stage company, I really like us, even early, this is an A stage company, right? I've got a CTO, probably more than a VP of engineering, I've got a product manager and a designer, and this is just all should report to the CEO like this, but it should report to the CEO like this early. It should not be the product manager reporting to the engineer or CTO. And even if the product manager is super junior, they shouldn't report to them. And the reason is because the task of the product manager should be to get out and figure out what's going on with the customer and have an independent opinion, even if it's a junior opinion, about what we should be doing. I think that's better than being driven by the CTO in terms of management. So. How, do people agree with this? I mean, do you have like a setup that looks like this, I hope, in most companies? Or do you have like engineers reporting to, yeah, please.
So sometimes the designer report to the product manager?
Yeah, question on the designer, product manager. I kind of like design having some separation at this stage too. I like a designer who can be a little independent, maybe be the product manager's partner as opposed to reporting to them in a company this small, but that's just my opinion. I think the B stage company, this thing, I don't know if designers love this. I've gotten a few objections from it, but design in this case, if you have a singular designer and you have a head of product, I think that's a good place for the designer to report versus the CEO. In the company that I'm working with now, that I just joined, the designer reports to the CEO or reported to the old CEO, and I'm not sure that that's how we're going to work it from here on. The reason is because I think in many cases, design as part of the product and product roadmap and product planning process is a really good place for product designers to be. Sometimes you see design rolled up into a design organization for the company along with the rest of the marketing team, right? So the marketing team and the product team shares a design resource, but I don't normally like that either. On the engineering side, oftentimes I'd like to see the CTO report into a head of engineering. That means somebody who manages people. So unless your CTO is somehow magically somebody who is also really good at managing people, I tend to like the CTO then reporting to somebody who's managing them, and that's my diagram here. Thoughts on this? Does this make sense? Seem right, wrong? Okay, but I'll just keep going. We'll kind of go through this a little bit more. At scale, I think it looks a little bit more like this. Which is you have a head of product, head of engineering. Product has a bunch of, this is probably more of a SaaS example because it was given at a SaaS forum earlier this week, but various directors for different product lines. And then in my product organization setup, there's two things that are different than most people. I really like a product ops team to be there at this scale. This is probably a C or D stage company if it's not public. Product ops is in charge of creating process for taking customer feedback into the organization, communicating roadmaps and everything out to the rest of the organization, right? They're the binding glue in a company. And then a growth team. And this is commonly associated with the term growth hacking, which is not a great term. But it is a team that thinks about the funnel of users coming into a product and where they're falling out of the funnel. And they're the ones that have an engineering team associated with them to help smooth out the funnel. And they are the team that knows how to do actual A/B testing, right? How many users do I have to have going through the pipes to do a real A/B test and be statistically significant? Those kinds of people in a growth team. And then the head of data and analytics, I think if you find the right person, I like them to be separate from the engineering and product teams, so they're not data Sherpas. I don't know if you heard the term data Sherpas, like if like a Sherpa on Everest, but sometimes data people feel like they're just being asked to write reports. And if they sit in the product team, oftentimes they'll just be asked to build dashboards and write reports. And I think data can be really strategic if you position it in the right place. And data people, especially if they have their own agenda for how they're thinking about data and using it, can be a separate organization. And then you can see my engineering team, which probably isn't too controversial. What do you guys think of this? Anybody running anything this big? Probably not, right? You were at Cubo, so no one's there yet. I'll come back in a year. Maybe somebody will be running a team this big. Yeah. Any questions? No? All right. Yeah, please. Yes. The question is, can I explain the difference between head of engineering and a CTO? That person can be one and the same sometimes, but the distinction for me is one is a manager of people and one thinks about the right technology path. So a head of engineering for me is somebody who has pretty good people management skills, is setting objectives for a team, maybe somebody that imposes some form of agile discipline on the team, right? Says this is how we're going to do agile. Somebody who is accountable in the business, like can join as a business partner in thinking about the business, that kind of person. CTO for me is somebody who, I think a lot of CTOs start out as the first technical guy in a company. That means they were a pretty good coder, they were thinking about the original architecture, and then they grow into a role where there's great familiarity with what's been built so far and can guide engineers as they work through problems, right? And maybe that turns into an architecture office in the future. But that's the distinction I draw, and maybe different companies will have different definitions of CTO, but that's my definition. All right, so moving beyond the structure, the question here is around building teams. What size engineering teams should you build? And then what is the right ratio of product managers to engineering teams? And what does that look like? This will be like, relatively controversial too, or maybe not. It depends on what you guys think. Small, nimble teams, so what does that look like? So I think if you are a startup, you probably look like this on the left, right? So you have 5 engineers, you've got a couple front-end guys, a couple back-end guys, and then you've got a designer and a product manager tied in here. And as you grow, maybe that structure just gets replicated multiple times, right? And so that's what you see here in the middle. Some companies can be in this form all the way through their if they go public. So for example, if you looked at Twilio, you guys know Twilio, the SMS services company, developer services company, they look like this. So Jeff has 600 engineers at Twilio and maybe 400 coding engineers, right? So he's got a bunch of SREs. So what he has in here is something that looks like this. So in his 400 engineers, he has 80 Scrum teams. And I think that's crazy. But he seems to really like doing that, and their business model kind of supports it, which is they are constantly building applications for developers and maybe putting 10 of them into a market at a time, find out which ones work, and then they pull the rest. So that fits their business model, and that's why they look like this. And then I think as your company gets bigger, and maybe even for you guys to think about, if you have good product managers, I think one of the ways that product managers grow is they are given more and more engineering resource to work with if they show they can handle it. So at Yahoo, I used to run 1 product manager to 10 engineers sometimes, even 12 to 15 engineers I've done before. Sometimes if you do that with an APM, like an associate PM running Scrum and maybe being the story owner, you can do it that way. And then at the end of my time at Box, we were gluing a product marketing manager to this setup too. So we were thinking about things like competitors and looking at early customer feedback before we were building products. So product product marketing managers glued in like this as well. Any questions on this or thoughts? I do tend to like kind of low PM to engineering ratios over time, especially as people develop. And then you can give them more responsibility. A really good PM can manage, I think, a pretty good sized engineering team, and at least in my opinion. And if that's, maybe that will take time to develop over here in Brazil. Yeah.
Are those PMs also POs, or they have POs working?
The question is, are those PMs also POs, or do they have POs working for them? If you're at 8 or 10, I think you need somebody who's an actual PO in the agile sense, right? So that would be my APM, because I think an APM would be a good person to be the story owner and somebody to basically be writing stories and sometimes running Scrum as opposed to an engineering manager. So yeah, that's why at this structure, I think you need some support. But an APM might, a good APM might support multiple teams on Scrum, and they might welcome the experience. So I think it just depends on who you have on your team. Yeah.
I'm curious about the ratio between product managers and designers. There you have like more PMs than designers on the team.
Yeah. The question was about the ratio of PMs to designers, especially in this middle slot here. I thought, I think the first thing to do when you add more engineers is make sure you have enough PMs to support the engineers. Because I think sometimes we just over-rotate, hire way too many, or like we need technical talent, so we just keep hiring engineers. But the ratio, I think, is always important. That's why I think PMs should be there first. The white dot here, the designer dot, I'm not sure. Depending on the situation, you might have 2 designers here. But oftentimes, in a situation like this, maybe you're starting to build more platform or back-end infrastructure, and you may not need it. That's all that was. It's possible you might need another designer, but it just it depends on the situation. Any other thoughts, questions on this? Okay. Hire diverse teams. This is about hiring. How do you hire product managers, and what do they look like? Hire them and have general athletes. So hire diverse teams of general athletes. Again, my opinion, general athletes versus people who know the business or have been in the business before. And then have a training or mentorship focus with your product managers. So this is, so every single year we put on a show in Moscone Center with 8,000 or 9,000 people. I think this year it was even more. It's called BoxWorks. And then part of BoxWorks is that we get on stage in front of that group, and then we present product roadmap. So this is about a third of my team from about a year ago. And yeah, sorry, I'm lying on the floor. For some reason, the teams thought that was hilarious. So what I want to do is talk about where I got people from, so you can see how I built this team, and then see if that helps you think about how you build your teams here. So there's always a group of experienced people on this team, but maybe not as many as you would think. So you see, there are a few. I had an experienced PM from Salesforce, a couple of experienced designers. So I really prefer experienced designers. I know experienced designers are hard to find. I think sometimes they're easier to find than good PMs. So, right, people who, and the reason why I like experienced designers is because designers make such a big difference when building software. I'm going to build a design that takes into account the fact that this page needs to perform, right? We're going to put this little widget here on each one of these rows returned, but I know that requires a database call for each one of these, but I'm still willing to put it into the design, or I'm going to pull it from the design. Right? That's so appreciated by an engineering team, right? Engineering teams sometimes get designs that they can't build because this will never perform. So just the idea of having a designer who's experienced in software, so I've tried to emphasize that. Some of these designers, yeah, so I hired, I hired Greg out of the East Coast. We found him in Virginia. I mean, and that's unusual for a Silicon Valley designer. We found Chad over in Santa Cruz. He was a surfer working at sort of design agency. We really dug down. We have a Dribble page. I don't know if you guys know Dribble, but we have a pretty aggressive Dribble page for developers where we're always posting our own work and trying to recruit designers. So designers, I think, are a big part of a really good team, particularly one where you have a lot of user interface to go through. Second group of people, if you do acquisitions of any form, but I actually would say this for the Brazil market, having met many people here in the past week. I always think that people who are company founders or kind of senior people at startups that are acquired really can make good product managers when they come into an organization. They're often used to thinking about the market and the product. Maybe you need them to be a little more disciplined about what they do when they come into more like a big product organization. But somebody asked me yesterday, well, how can we find good product managers in Brazil? And I said, well, one good way is to go find the former founder of a company that may not want to be another founder right now, right? So they're ready to, they founded a company, maybe they sold it or they exited, but now they want a job to do something, but they don't want to found another company. Those people, if you can find them, and I'm sure some of them exist, I think make excellent product managers as a starting point, right? There's a lot of good ingredients there for good product managers. So that's this is Jeff over here and John, really the CTO and CEO of two companies that we acquired. So really good adds to the team. Always hiring people out of college directly or out of grad programs. So we have a rotation program at Box. So we rotate people out of college through different groups at Box. So Katie came out of MIT. We usually, this group here, we do about 600 interviews and hire 4 people a year. So we tend to find really, really good people in this area. And then finally, lots of people from other parts of the company, but I have a strong bias towards people who are consultants and have done consulting in the field and work with clients, or people who are program managers. That they're used to doing program, they understand how the engineering teams work, and they are credible even as they come over to product. They need to be trained on how to face out to the customer more, but that's where we get people as well. So that's really my team, and I thought that was a good way to just give you a sense of how random it is. Really, right? This team isn't assembled from like a product management factory. It's glued together from people from other parts of the company and disciplines, and some people out of college, and all of those kinds of things, right? So that's, this is kind of how I built my team. And again, I favor general athletes. There's not one super experienced content management PM in this. There's nobody from EMC or nobody from Documentum or any old line content management product school. There's literally no one on this list from Microsoft. And there's no one from IBM, there's no one from Oracle, there's no one from Google, and there's no one from Facebook. So I think that's the way some of these teams have to be built. And I'm not saying you can't build it with a team from those companies, but this is how I built my team. Questions on this? And what's that? Turnover of people. For us, so I'd like to say generally pretty low for us over the years. But I think the younger the team that you hire, the greater the turnover culturally, I think. We're seeing, I think a lot of careers in Silicon Valley are starting to be 1.5 to 2 year careers. I think the other thing that happened, I think the other disadvantage of having a team this young is that there's a lot of push on when am I going to be promoted, right? So organizations that are this young, there's a lot of angst, I think. So you get with it like some really good things, right? Get all the good energy and all of those things, and then I think on the other side, if the organization doesn't have this big tree to it, it's relatively flat. Sometimes you'll lose people because they can easily go get a bigger title somewhere else. And it's sad to lose a product manager who got an offer as a senior product manager at another company. It just kills you. But it does happen, and you just have to keep bringing people in. I think sticking to your guns. Other questions? Yeah, please. Yeah, 600 people, 600 interviews for 4 people. Yeah, it's our college rotation program. So it's painful. I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah. And not only that, when you get the 4 people, they're amazing, but then so easily poached. Because you hired them out of college and you have them, you have some baseline idea of what you want to pay somebody out of college, and that's not what Google wants to pay them. So maybe not as big an issue here, or maybe it is, but having product managers pulled from the team, it's an honor, right? One of my former product managers is the chief product officer at Glassdoor now. So it's really an honor to see your product managers go off and do great things. But yeah, that's what happens when you build a good team. What about compensation plans? Yes. What is the question? What about compensation plans? Are you asking how much do we pay people, or? Yeah. Yeah, so this is yeah, so this is it's an issue. So this at Box, what we did was some companies will do this, and I'm glad we did it. We declare ourselves as a P70 player in Box, or P70 payer at Box. That means that if Google pays $1, we will pay 70 cents on that dollar. Works especially well before you're public, right? Because then you've got the equity and the upside in the equity, hopefully holding that together. But we continue to say that we're a P70 player, even today. And the reason why we can say we're a P70 player is you come to a company that has 2,000 people, not 80,000, and then your impact and your growth in time, will be greater and with more exposure. But I think if you declare you're a P70 payer and an employee can make a good decision, right? If they need more cash, they can go someplace that always pays them more cash. And if they need something else, they come join you. So that worked okay, except for the fact that this team is different than most teams at Box in the sense that almost 100% of these people live in San Francisco. So, and they commute down to the peninsula to work with us. So I kind of drift, I can drift up a little bit. I drift to P75 or P80 sometimes because even though this office is on Caltrain in Silicon Valley, you're asking a lot of people to commute down on Caltrain. And if you want those people on your team, I think you're probably paying them a little bit more. Other questions? No? All right. The final thing that I want to talk about is you're doing your job if no one is happy. Your job is not to make people happy. In fact, people should be unhappy around you because you made a trade-off, right? Their whole job as a PM is to make trade-offs, right? What happens when you make trade-offs? Not everyone is happy. So I hope that's just the conclusion you draw. And I wanted to show you exactly how unhappy that makes people sometimes. I just decided to make it personal. So this is direct feedback from Aaron. I think this is probably like 2012 or something like this. And this is just my performance review, like part of the downside of my performance review. It's often not thinking big enough. In this case, we were talking about third-party apps. That was part of my job. Still 18 months in, we don't have obvious large-scale programs to generate developers. Everything comes from PR or direct outreach, and I don't see us looking like Microsoft, right? So Aaron's standard of our performance is, why don't we look like Microsoft? I mean, we do have 200 employees, right? So I think the bar is so high, right? And I love CEOs that push the bar like this because, otherwise I would never think that we should be looking like. It's actually awesome to change the mindset to think, well, why don't we look like Microsoft yet? What needs to happen for us to get there? You can see the second one. Chris still needs to move a bit faster and think more strategically. Something like platform pricing doesn't need 3-month turnaround. It needs 1 to 2 meetings, testing it on a few developers, and we move on, right? So not true. There's no way that you can do that, right? But he believes it. There's nothing he wrote on here that was like, I just want to push Chris in his performance review. He believes this. He doesn't think we're moving fast enough. And we met every week. The story I tell about Aaron and me is we met every Sunday at 3 p.m. That means that every Sunday at 3 p.m. we sat down in a taco shop outside of the headquarters and we talk about what's going right and not right in the business. And so he can write stuff like this. I mean, there's a relationship there, right? There's not a fence. There's a good relationship. But yet this is, if he had to give a critique, he's pretty honest about his critique. By the way, if you don't get feedback like this, you should ask for it. There's no way everybody's happy with what you're doing or that that you're doing a perfect job when you're in the product management seat. People should talk to you. This is the other kind of boss that I had at the company. This is our COO. Imagine a guy with a really deep voice saying this. I don't recommend that you write feedback like this either. Especially the second paragraph. I think of you as a smart, organized, thoughtful, strategic guy because you know what's coming next, right, after that one. So yesterday felt disorganized, not well thought out, not well framed, and generally not up to the standards of work I expect from you, right? I mean, this is his way of doing feedback. He was trying to write feedback. Our feedback to Dan is you're not good at giving feedback, and so I think he started to write. he started to write some of the extra words in here because of the feedback we gave him, right? In the spirit of sharing feedback, he writes. And then his last paragraph, please figure this out, and I'd be more than delighted. I think he uses the word delighted. Yeah, I would be delighted to do so if I can personally engage or help in any way possible. So listen, I use this for a few reasons. A, I do feel like if you're in a good, solid product role, you should be seeing critique. Like sales guys are not happy with you. Engineers should not be happy with you. Your CEO should not be happy with you. At least some part of that constituency should always be complaining about what you're doing as a product manager, because you're going to be doing things that they don't believe in, right? You're going to be asking them to, believe in you making a decision that they may not agree with, and that's really where this comes down to. So that kind of brings me to the end of the slides I've got today. So let me go through these again, right? So market-facing skills. If you're hiring and you're a PM, working on market-facing skills is a big deal. Drawing the product, doing product planning in a really clear and transparent way. Small, nimble teams, and then you saw the way that I at least drew out for you what my team looked like. And then this kind of, creating, I mean, when I say you're not doing your job if no one is happy, what I really mean is that there should be tension in a business around product. It should be, we should always have really good, positive personal relationships with each other, but we should always have fundamental disagreements about product. And that's really what that is there, so that we create some tension around doing things that are, one way or the other. So that's the prepared stuff I have. I can take a few minutes of questions. I think that's the amount of time I have, and so if you guys have them, I'd be happy to answer them. Yeah, please.
Yeah, today, what's your biggest challenge related to product?
Right now, in my new company? So the biggest challenge in my new company is we only have one customer, and it's Walmart. So this company got formed in a strange way. It's a little travel software company that Walmart really liked, and they asked the founder to build a travel software product to handle their global travel. And then the goal was then to take that product and go broadly with it. But the biggest product challenge is that we have one customer, and that creates tremendous risk in the business, as well as it creates more revenue than a lot of people already. I mean, I can do revenue at Walmart, more revenue with Walmart than a lot of startups can with 10 times the number of customers if they got them out of San Francisco. So the problem is I have a product team that is just talks on the phone every day to Walmart at 8:30 in the morning, and then has a weekly call, and then they have more demands, and that's the issue. So it would be very similar to if any company in this room somehow landed a really big customer and it changed their roadmap, right? So they said, we love you, we're Telefonica, and we love your product, and we would love it if you did these 10 things so we could talk about you publicly. And then that's very similar to where we are, right? So we are struggling to generalize the product and to have the product easily configurable for new customers and to do things that matter to other people besides Walmart. So yeah, that's the biggest issue we've got today. But yeah, thanks for asking.
I would like to know about what were your goals or OKRs, or how did you make people go to the same direction? Do they have shared goals, or everyone in the team had one different kind of?
Yeah, good question. So we did run OKRs at Box, so we are devoted to OKRs. What we did was we have 4 OKRs at the company level. The 4 OKRs was, one is user growth, basically just day-to-day user growth in Box was the first OKR. The second one was ARR, which is a sales goal. The third one is churn, which is the number of people leaving our product. That was a customer success goal. And the fourth was a people goal, which is associated with engagement. We constantly surveyed employees for engagement. We have engagement numbers that we wanted to hit. So those are the 4 goals. Then that cascaded to my OKR. My OKR has 3 of those goals on it. So my OKR had customer growth, ARR, and then it also had the churn metric on it. And so what we did was then that got cascaded to my product managers, because I have product managers working on all of those problems. And so that became part of their goals. So we tried really hard to cascade off the top OKRs into the individual product OKRs. And then the problem with product OKRs is I bet you if I read your product OKRs, they would look like ship X product by Y date. And that's a poor product OKR because the product manager doesn't really have control over that sometimes, right? And they're not the ones directly responsible for shipping X product by Y date. So I think a lot of us who are writing product OKRs are probably forced to do something a little bit different. Like I'd like to see 10 customer interviews done this quarter and all of them documented, or whatever it is, or find a mentor and document who it is so I know who it is. But I think product OKRs are especially hard to write because they tend to look like ship products by X date, and they're just yeah, we have revenue OKRs. So sales targets sometimes are set based on the sales team saying, I need this product to be out and to run pretty well. So it's okay to have a product manager with a sales number because that's just a reflection of the connection between the feature and the sales that they're driving. I do think that's okay. Shared OKRs, right? I think that's actually a pretty good idea. Other questions?
Yes, here.
Oh, where? Yeah, sorry.
Can you recommend some blogs or books that you enjoy?
Sure. The question is around blogs and books. The Hard Thing About Hard Things is one of my favorite books. If you've never read that one, I think it's just worth a read. I like the more general books around business, so Crossing the Chasm. Like those kinds of books I like more. Some people like Marty Kagan. I don't know if some of you guys have read some of his stuff. I'm a little less of a fan of Marty. Marty drives on this kind of inspirational kind of, you can come up with the iPhone, that kind of thing. And I don't think that's a fair ask to any product team. I think product teams, you can see where my beliefs are. I think product teams are pragmatically the owner of making everything successful, and to put onto them the burden of being the visionaries in the company and the ones who are constantly innovating, I don't think that's a fair ask. They can be part of the process, but product management, I think, is inherently a very pragmatic function more than anything else. So those are a few. If you've never read Ben Horowitz's Good Product Manager and Bad Product Manager, I think it's just a manifesto that he wrote. I would probably go take a look at that. That's a pretty interesting kind of thing. If you are following product management software, there's a company called aha.io that runs product for the very first time. I think it's pretty good product management SaaS software. I have a good friend who's the CEO of that company. Is a guy named Brian DeHoff, and he tends to write a lot of stuff, and he has a book out that I think is pretty interesting too. But they serve a lot of product management teams. That's a $40 million SaaS company. It was founded like 5 years ago. It was bootstrapped. It's one of the very few bootstrapped companies I know of in Silicon Valley. And he's just got a really nice kind of feel and tone about him when he writes. So those are some that I like. Does that help? Okay.
Hi.
Yes. Hi.
I'm work as a product manager for a while, but another segment in consumer goods. And I find myself really passionate about technology and digital, and I'm trying to make this transition now.
Yes.
So I want to know some tips about where to start, a good place to start. I'm already studying a lot and trying to talk with people in this area.
Yeah.
But
So first of all, I think I welcome people who have backgrounds in other areas to come into software, hardware, product management. Oftentimes it's because the perspective you bring is not from an engineering perspective, or it's usually from a market point of view coming in. And also you may have really good market-facing skills that I tend to really like in product managers. I think what tends to happen for people who come from outside, though, who don't have software backgrounds, is that how curious are you? And have you really made an effort to understand what's going on when you look at a software product? So for example, just simply, how does information show up on a web browser? How is it printed in HTML? How did it get there, right? And what was the server behind it that served up that information, and how did it get there? If there's a user authenticated, how did they authenticate in more likely than not? One of the things that I sometimes ask people to do is just build a simple application, ground up, web app from the ground up. Build it in some language that you like. Choose it. It could be any language, PHP even. And then output a bunch of PHP, print that PHP, or print the HTML directly from PHP so you understand what's happening, right? Do a login using OAuth or something like that. I mean, that's pretty hard, right? So, but just find a couple things to do that just give you more leverage in understanding how products work. I think that's a really, really good way to get into it. Here's another question I ask PMs. Open your phone and just direct me to one of your favorite apps and tell me why it's one of your favorite apps. So that means that be a student of looking at what other people are doing and how they do it, and you know, have an opinion about products that you like and don't like. The other thing is I am a genuine product guy. That means that like every product I own, I think about. Right? So if you were to open my bag or look in my bag, every product in that I have in there, I like for some reason. I'm a photographer, so I like this Canon camera. You know, I really like, you know, I really like this particular piece of technology, so I carry it with me everywhere. My headphones, whatever it is, right? You can have a passion about products, and I think all of that comes together to be, you know, effective. And then I think you have to find your way in. And oftentimes the way I would suggest to find a way into a software company, if you're coming in from the outside, is join the customer service team. Or be a program manager at the company, have a program management cert or something like that, and then join the team. And then you get to know the team over time, and I'd say that the team you saw up there, probably half the team came from that part of the organization, just people that everyone loves over time. Helpful? Okay, cool.
So you told that
Thank you.
you told that project managers had to have a voice, even if it's a junior person.
Yes.
Sure, but it seems that it's the biggest difficult in that whole. What do you think about that? You have to really deal with different opinion. Even the CEO don't want what you believe. What do you think about it?
Yeah, so I think the communication part of it and the opportunity to have a voice is more important than necessarily making a decision based on that opinion. So let's say you do have someone really junior in the room. I think it's totally appropriate. I think it's more important to listen and have the voice. And then to make a decision later, you can say, we decided not to do that, but let me tell you why. And I also really thank you for bringing that, right? So thank you for talking to me about this, so that they go away and are encouraged to bring another idea. So I think for me, it's more about culture and then perspective than it is about you have to listen to the junior people on your team, if that makes sense. I don't think we always have to make decisions based on what people tell us, but the fact that we're open to the feedback means a lot. And I think that's where I think you build a really good culture in a product team. When people feel like they can't talk to you or they're afraid of giving feedback, I mean, that's the kind of stuff where I think it's really debilitating for a product team to not feel like people have a voice, that, you know, it's just, I mean, it's something that I really care about as a leader. Yes.
You said that you work now in a company that has just one customer.
Yes.
Does it begin inside the Walmart, or it's a software house? How does it happen?
Yeah.
And how do you manage these demands that the customer puts? Because how to plan essentially, as you know, how to not to be. I don't know how to explain it.
I think I understand the question, which is how do you create a balanced direction or roadmap when you're serving one client at that level? And then the question was, how did it happen? It was just a really strange thing. A lawyer in LA really enjoys traveling, and so he created a little travel site that you could enter an amount of dollars into, and that it would tell you where you could go this weekend, right? So you put $500 in, and they say, oh, you could go to Seattle and stay in this hotel for $500 this weekend. And people really liked it because it opened up the possibilities for them if they love to travel. And then one day somebody from Walmart ran across this travel site, and they said, we love this. Let's ask him to come to our headquarters and talk to us about our global travel project. And amazingly, they gave the project to him. And the reason I say amazingly is because most of us take years to work up to serving Walmart, and that was his first customer, and he never built software before. So it's a Series A company with probably more people than you would expect in the U.S. A Series A company in the U.S., 5 to 10 people maybe. This thing has 22 already, 23. It's more, so at that level, it's burning a ton of cash relative to how you guys burn cash here. And so the trick is, how do we start to get a second, a third customer while meeting all of Walmart's demands? And the problem is I have product managers who are head down working every day with Walmart, And then they know, so, and engineers are complaining, if you have engineers in the room, they're complaining about the if Walmart statements they have to make in the code, right? If Walmart, then do this, but if it's somebody else, then do all this other stuff. It's gonna kill us, right? So one of the reasons I'm gonna go in, and I was interested in it, because I like this problem. I know how to attack this problem. So we just have to take it piece by piece, and that's why I was excited to go do this. How to manage the situation, yeah. So I already gave an instruction to the product guy, the product head, and I said, listen, I need you to do this. Just carve me 15 to 20% of the engineering time immediately. Just carve it. That's just, it's an order, right? That means that, because there's no other way to do this. We're just gonna keep working on Walmart's stuff if we don't stop it. So I usually don't like doing this, but I said, listen, you're giving 15 to 20% of engineering and your time back to the company. And that 15 to 20% of time, we're gonna work on stuff that generalizes the product. So I've only been there a week. So this is literally the first thing I told them to do. The second thing I told them to do is that we don't have engineering velocity. That means nobody can tell me the velocity of the engineering team. And there's a lot of small companies that we just cruise from sprint to sprint. We never estimate anything, we're just like building stuff. But at the rate that we're going, we don't even know how much, what points we're putting where. It's just, we have no velocity, so I don't know how fast it's going. So I asked for velocity. And the third thing is we're running Scrum with somebody who's never run Scrum before. So my first instruction to her is, I need you to take a Scrum class or something, right? I think that's the kind of stuff we're ironing out first. Immediate carve out of time, starting to move people into, like, getting them into a place where they learn what they need to learn, and just, and then eventually we'll get to a place where I'll talk to Walmart. And I think that conversation, I think if you could tell a customer explicitly why you're choosing not to do something when they ask you to do it, it's very helpful. And they can still disagree with you, but they at least know that it's coming. Yeah, right. So, but that's one of the things that I'm going to start doing. Okay, others, yes.
Yeah, how do you evaluate a PM's performance?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. I do think that you can find PMs who worked with me in the past who would say that Chris is not making me accountable for the work that I'm doing. So, for example, somebody's team failed to launch a product within the time frame we needed to go out, and we'd lost some revenue for it. And she said, well, why don't you hold me accountable for that, right? You should just hold me accountable. You should do whatever you do to hold me accountable in review time. So I would say I've struggled personally with that accountability, because I don't believe it was her fault that the product slipped. So I think that there's many factors. We didn't know this technical debt existed over here, so we had to rework this piece of code. So I think the way that I like to rate product managers oftentimes is I get a lot of 360 feedback on people. And we take 360 feedback from everybody they work with. And I don't know if you guys do that in a lot of companies here, but it's painful to do 360s. But sometimes, so our product managers will have 360 feedback from over 10 people at review time. So you can know how someone's doing if you have 10 people giving them feedback, everywhere from the engineering manager to the documentation manager to the data analyst to sometimes the customer or customer partner. We oftentimes get a lot of compliments on our product managers directly from customers. And also another thing that I did in my last role. So every year I meet over 150 customers face to face, even in my last year. So either like in person, I'm in the field meeting them, or they come to the office. So you just know, what's going on with customers, and I really push that hard on my PMs too. So we have PMs that meet close to just as many customers as I do. And we had 88,000 customers. So company customers, so that wasn't even a small fraction of all of those customers. But yeah, I don't have a great answer for that one, unfortunately. Yes.
Oh, hey, Chris. If the product management is focused on market, how and who should transfer the product backlog to engineering,
yes,
and who should be the product owner on the Scrum team?
Yeah, so as the teams get bigger, I think you saw me add an APM to that. So like as teams get bigger, you can have a junior product manager do this. There was a question here earlier from somebody who was interested in being a product manager coming from consumer. That's a great role. I mean, it's like if you could get a role driving product and Scrum every day from the seat of an APM, it's such a good way to learn the business. So sometimes I create that role so that it's there early on. Other times, so companies that small sometimes, and this is what I'm going to do here, is ask an engineering manager to drive on some of those things. And so organize stories with the product manager so that they take over some of that function. And that's not perfect, but we don't have that many bodies, so we're throwing an engineering body at it. I even took somebody once who was an EA and threw her at the project. We had so few bodies, right? So, and basically got an EA to take a Scrum class, and so I just said, I don't need you to be my EA, I need you to run this team over here. So yeah, it takes some creativity sometimes, but yeah, if you could, the product manager has to be free to be forward facing. I'm sorry, it just has to happen. If it doesn't happen, you're just completely blind, or you're mostly blind, and you're just talking to yourself every day when you build product, and I just don't think that's okay.
Chris, that's kind of related to that, and I saw that your team is quite non-technical, and Box is a technical product.
Yes.
We have the same situation, and I like the idea of having a product team that's more, that have more of a market-facing team and market-face time. But sometimes the discussion is quite hard with the engineering team. If the product doesn't know a little better or deeper about the product, about the technical product, what do you recommend me? Like, is there a kind of an immersion program along with the engineering team, or I don't know, what should we do?
Yeah.
How can we win that discussion, or not win? Or how can we handle that discussion?
Yeah, so I actually think that I think this is an important question, because regardless of anything I say about market-facing skills, at some point an engineer is going to say to a product manager, I have this technical issue, we have to deal with it, and I have to go deal with it. And it's going to cost me 3 months, or you can't do anything with me for 3 months, right? Or something like that. And a product manager who doesn't have any technical chops has no grounds to even ask the next question. At that level, this is a really problematic issue, right? So I don't know if there's a good solution to this, but in your company you have technical people, and I think there needs to be some willingness to teach. And on the other side, the product managers, there has to be some willingness to do some homework outside of the business or outside of the day-to-day to get themselves up to speed. Like if you're completely at that level where you understand nothing about this, like that conversation isn't happening, I think maybe you've rotated the other way too much, right? So this is why I kind of pull back on the, hey, are they curious enough? Have they done enough homework? Do they understand the product at the level they need to understand it? If you're working with a REST API, at the very least, somebody needs to use Postman to be able to push a call into it and see what comes back out, right? That's not asking too much. So I think that you can ask a product manager to do enough to get to a point where they can help make that decision, or like at least be relevant. Otherwise, an engineer is always going to win that conversation, right? So I don't know if I have a better answer for you than that. I'm just telling you the way I lean from a skills point of view, and then the deficiency is the one that you just pointed out, which is that has to be trained back in and has to be pushed, which is one of the reasons why when I did OKRs, I have done the who is your mentor OKR, right? So if you don't have a mentor, a product management mentor or an engineering mentor who can help you learn, then by the end of the quarter, I need the name of the person that you've chosen to be that mentor so you can continue to work on it. I think that's not a bad OKR to give to a product manager. Other questions? Yeah. Oh, are you waving at me to like stop? Okay. Yeah, I have to catch a flight, sorry.
Chris.
Yeah. Yes.
Can I ask the last one?
You may ask the last question.
Thank you so much. I'm very curious about, what do you think about remote work? Do you ever try it?
Remote work for product management or for engineers? Oh, yes.
Anything.
Yeah, just an example. I have my team now has 8 people in San Francisco, and everyone else is everywhere else. So that means we have people. I have a data guy in Iceland. I have an engineer in Xi'an, China. I have like a couple guys in Denver. I've never run a team this dispersed. I'm used to using like a bundle of engineers in Bangalore or something like that. So I think today there are some companies that have proven we can do this, but they're pretty extraordinary companies, right? It's like, do you guys know InVision? Like the InVision company, like they're completely distributed and they have all this ridiculous cult-like process for making it work. I don't mean to say it's ridiculous. But it's a lot. There's a lot of complicated. Thank you. It's complicated. There's a lot of process. And, you know, Clark seems to like all this. I don't know. But so the answer, I think, to your question is yes. I think this is how we're going to work in the future. I think we'll be very distributed, and we need process and experience on how to make that work, but I think we can do it. So actually one of my, you know, just now that I have spent the week here in Brazil, I've been thinking a little bit about whether, you know, maybe we should think about finding some data scientists down here somewhere and maybe set up shop. But it just depends on, you know, what happens as we go forward. So yes, totally possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Guys, thank you so much for coming today. I appreciate it.